finishing up our little sugya on the bottom of Yud Gimel Amud Aleph. We're continuing in our discussion about the machloket between Rebbe and Chachamim, or Rebbe and Rabbanan. So we had started with in the green section where Rebbe had said Kriyat Shema Kichtava. You have to read Kriyat Shema as it's written, and Rashi clarified in Lashon HaKodesh. V'Chachamim b'chol lashon, and the Chachamim say in any language. And then we had a few other disagreements between Rebbe and Rabbanan about how to interpret different words in Shema. So after we hear all these disagreements, the Gemara is now going to play out a hypothetical machloket between Rebbe and Rabbanan. It's going to suggest that Rebbe and Rabbanan each think something, but then reject that suggestion. So we start over here. Lemeinra disava Rebbe d'chol haTorah kula b'chol lashon ne'emra. So the Gemara makes an inference, makes a suggestion. This is to say that Rebbe thinks that for the rest of the Torah, right, any other part of the Torah, it can be said in any language. So the Gemara makes the inference that according to Rebbe, for any other pasuk aside from Shema that you need to say as part of a mitzvah, you can say it in any language you want. So how did the Gemara get to that conclusion? The Gemara explains it's Hava Amina. Hava Amina is an inference that the Gemara makes that's going to be rejected. Excuse me. It's going to be rejected. De'i salka da'atach b'lashon hakodesh ne'emra v'hayu dikatav rachmana lamali. So here's the Gemara is explaining that if I would have thought that it could be said in Hebrew, only in Hebrew, right? If Rebbe would think that the rest of the Torah has to only be said in Hebrew, why does the Torah, right? Why does the merciful one, the Torah, have to write v'hayu? According to Rebbe, if the default would be that you have to read any pasuk that you come across in Hebrew, then why does Rebbe think that the word v'hayu in Shema is coming specially to teach us that you have to say Shema in Hebrew? Isn't that the default? So it therefore must be logically, since Rebbe is coming to say that v'hayu is an exception to the rule, the general rule, that must mean that the general rule for any other pasuk is that you can read it in any language. But now the Gemara rejects this and says, actually, no, we could explain why, even though Rebbe thinks that any pasuk has to be said in Hebrew, why we needed a special word of v'hayu to teach us that Shema also has to be said in Hebrew. It's tarich mishum diketiv Shema. It is needed for the pasuk to say v'hayu because it's written Shema. So since the word Shema appears in Kriyat Shema, it might have misled us to think that you can say Shema in any language you want, that Shema is an exception to the general rule that any pasuk you read has to be in Hebrew. But since we have to read Shema in Hebrew just like any other pasuk, the Torah added in this extra word, right, this special word of v'hayu, according to Rebbe, to teach us that just like any other pasuk, Shema also has to be read in Hebrew. Now the Gemara is going to do the same thing, but with Chachamim's opinion. So the Gemara makes an inference, L'meimra disavre Rabbanan d'chol haTorah kula b'lashon hakodesh ne'emra. So this is to say, right, that based on Chachamim's opinion about Kriyat Shema, that it could be said in any language, that Rabbanan must think that the rest of the Torah can only be said in Hebrew. De'i salka da'atach b'chol lashon ne'emra Shema dekatav rachamana lamali. That if you would think that it could be said in any language, that the rest of the Torah could be said in any language, why, according to the Chachamim, do I need the Torah to say Shema? Right? Why would I need, if Chachamim think that the default rule is that you could say any pasuk in any language you want, then why would they need this extra special word by Shema, right, the word of Shema, to come teach them that Shema can also be said in any language? Why is it that Shema would be an exception? It's tarich mishum diktiv v'hayu. No, it is needed. That word Shema actually is needed to reinforce the general rule that any pasuk can be read in any language because the word v'hayu is written. Since in Kriyat Shema we find the word v'hayu, which could mislead us to think that we could say Shema only in Hebrew, therefore the Chachamim come to remind us, no, it also says Shema there, and that word of Shema is coming to make sure we know that Kriyat Shema, just like any other pasuk, follows the rule that it could be said in any language.